Hey everyone, it's time for another edition of Beaver Banter.
Beaver Sports Talk lives here.
It is the Beaver Banter podcast, presented as always by Bemidji State University Alumni and Foundation. I'm CJ Baumgartner. There is Ian Rivers. And Ian, what a good weekend and week to be a Beaver. The vibes are immaculate right now with all the fall and winter sports that are happening right now. It feels pretty darn good.
Yeah, this was one of the best weekends so far this season for the Beavers. I mean, I was going to make the comparison to that homecoming weekend. Obviously, if you just compare the records side by side, this weekend is not as good because of the fact that volleyball did lose twice. Women's hockey didn't play. But, you know, you stack up the fact that football got a big win. Women's soccer took 6 points. Hockey got 5 of 6. And, you know, the last time we talked about it, it was 6 of 6, but it was not really conference points. It was against a lowly Alaska Anchorage team. So this one feels a little bit bigger. And then you combine it with volleyball's win that they got last Tuesday we didn't even get a chance to talk about, that we will talk about at some point in this show. It does feel like it's maybe all of that being, you know, homecoming weekend, going 8-0-1, maybe you still give the edge to that weekend. But this one is a very close second, if anything. It was a very good weekend.
Yeah, it was a very great weekend with the women's soccer sweeps, with the hockey sweeps, and with football dismantling Jamestown. And a lot of things to talk about. Let's start with the hottest team on campus. It's got to be Bemidji State women's soccer. Ian, they had 2 games over the weekend. What happened? Let's just start with the first game of the weekend.
Yeah, first game, Concordia St. Paul. It was a 1-0 victory for the Beavers. They took them 70 minutes, almost 71, to score the go-ahead goal. It was Dana Stockey getting her first goal. I believe her first goal as a Beaver, and her first goal of the season, obviously. And that's how the match ended, 1-0, 1-0, if you will. Assisted by Maggie Kramer and Molly Bergstrand. Very good game for the Beavers. I mean, they outshot CSP 9-3. CSP only had 3 shots on the whole night, none of them on target.
Goodness gracious.
So, yeah, it was a really, really dominant game from the Beavers, and one that they really needed. You know, we talked about the standings heading into this weekend, and this was a big game because you looked at Concordia St. Paul in the standings, and they were, at the time, neck and neck with you. They were 3 points behind you, right at that 4-5 line in the playoffs, deciding that kind of final home playoff team. And Bemidji State gets 3 points, not just a draw. A draw would have been pretty good because then you stay 3 points ahead of them. But now you're 6 points ahead of them with only 3 games to go. So that's huge. And then to follow it up with the game against Winona State, it was a 2-1 victory, and it kind of looked like they were going to drop some points. They gave up a penalty late in the game. They ended up winning one back. It started off, Brianna Willert in the 13th minute of the game got her first of the season, assisted by Ella Wade. It was off of a corner kick. The Beavers have been scoring off of set pieces a lot this year, especially corner kicks. It's been really impressive to see, and that's something that you can definitely look forward to come postseason time. It's good to take advantage of set pieces when you get them, so I'm happy that they've been putting them away this year in numbers. But like I said, just over 10 minutes to play in the game, BSU gives up a penalty. JC Sturrock of the Warriors puts it away, and it's 1-1, and you're kind of thinking, oh, shoot, like, you know, maybe we weren't expecting to win every game from here on out to end the season, but, you know, it stinks that we gave up a penalty with 10 minutes to go when this 6-point weekend would have been absolutely, you know, monumental for this team and what they could do in trying to get a home playoff game. And then the Beavers go, and they were super aggressive in the last 10 minutes, pressing hard. And they ended up winning a penalty of their own. It was definitely deserved. Not just a weak call by the referee. Trust me on that. And guess who put it away? Katrina Barthelt getting her 10th goal of the season with just 2.5 minutes to play in the game. The Beavers capture 3 points from the Warriors. And that's another team that's kind of hanging around. Winona State now on the outside looking in to the playoff picture, when that point would have put them just 1 point behind 8th place Northern State. So now they're 3 points behind, which is 3 games to go. That's big for them. But the Beavers do have an opportunity to help them coming up on Friday with a game against Northern State. But yeah, huge results this weekend for women's soccer, getting 2 victories.
And this clinches them a playoff spot, correct?
Yep. So they are 10 points ahead of 9th placed Wayne State College, which means, you do some simple math and multiplication, and you come out to 3 games left. You can get 3 points per game. That's 9 points. That means that we are in the clear. So at the very worst, the Beavers can finish in 8th place. And even that would be really difficult because Northern State and UMary are currently 9 points behind you. So both of them would somehow have to get all 9 points. And then the teams in front of them would have to get at least 6 points. Like, you're probably not going to finish outside the top 5 at the very least. And you do have a 5-point buffer over Minot State, who currently sits in 5th place, which is, of course, the cutoff to get a home playoff game. So 5-point buffer, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big deal with only 2 games to go. It's, it might seem like it's a little bit easier to pick up, but when you consider some of the games that Bemidji State has left, I do think that they can probably get, at minimum 3 points, from these last 3 games and kind of help themselves clinch that home playoff berth. But they do have an opportunity to do something even better, which would be potentially getting that 2 or that 3 seed. We're not necessarily scared of Mankato. We've gone and played them before, and we took a point off of the Mavericks. Still to this day, the only goals that they have been scored against the only goals they've had scored against them, I should say, has come from Bemidji State. But at the end of the day, it would be nice to be able to kind of wait a little bit later in the tournament. Maybe somebody else
if
knocks
you get on
them
the
off.
opposite side of the bracket, they have to make them work a little bit before you have to go play them.
Right. And then if you're trying to get into the national tournament too, the likelihood that you lose to them is greater than any other team in this conference. Like, that's the fact of the matter. Whether or not we do believe we can beat them or not, we do. But the likelihood you lose to them is greater than, St. Cloud or Augustana or Minot. So if you can win an extra couple games, maybe that helps your at-large berth when it comes time to, hopefully getting into the NCAA tournament here in a couple weeks, which will have to start
really on track to do.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Overall in the season, 10-2-3. They've made the tournament with worse records than that. So, they've got a couple.
As long as they hang on, they kind of keep things going. Like you said, get a home playoff game, win that game. And at the very, win a tournament game, at least kind of don't completely fall off at the end of the year. And even if they do, they still probably are could back into one at this kind of rate. So it would take a monumental kind of collapse for things to not look that way. And like you said, you kind of been prefacing it a little bit. The final stretch of the season here, Friday, Halloween night, they go to Northern, they go to Aberdeen. And then on Sunday, they go to Jamestown for their first Division II matchup against the Jimmies. And then they close the season on Thursday, November 6th against Minnesota Duluth. And, 2 weeks less than from when people hear this podcast, we'll be into the NSIC tournament's first round. So only 3 games left to go, 2 of them on the road. You got to get through those road games right away. And again, all these teams kind of are in that middle pack of the conference. There's nobody that on paper really scares you, especially that UMD team that you've already beaten 3-1 on your home, or excuse me, I believe that was on the road early in the season. So have them coming to the Chet late in the season. Things are really coming the way. And we kind of knew this, Ian. Once Bemidji State got past Minnesota State, we kind of knew things were lining up for the Beavers to stack up some points and get themselves right up there with the Mavericks at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a little bit more difficult, I think, than, it seems even after that. Yes, Crookston and Moorhead were kind of gimme games, but Concordia and Winona were both in playoff spots when you played them. Northern State's currently in a playoff spot, and Minnesota Duluth is definitely not in a playoff spot, but they're tied with Winona State right now at 15 points. They very well could be fighting for that playoff spot at the end of the season when it all comes down to it. So, yeah, and Jamestown as well, they should be a gimme, right? It's their first year of Division II, but guess what? They just helped the Beavers out quite a bit this last weekend. They took a 0-0 draw with Augustana and took 2 points off of the Vikings there, which helped the Beavers leapfrog them in the standings, and now the Beavers are in a tie with St. Cloud State in second place at 27 points. So, I don't want to project forward too much, CJ, but there is one other thing I wanted to bring up. Just looking at the schedule moving forward, if the Beavers can take care of business, there's a real chance they can finish in that second spot because on the final day of the season, St. Cloud State's matchup is Minnesota State, and that could be playing right into the Beavers' hands. St. Cloud State this weekend does play Augustana, and on Friday they play Wayne State. So those are two definitely really tough teams as well for the Huskies. Maybe you hope on that Sunday game that St. Cloud State and Augustana draw each other and take some points and kind of cannibalize themselves and give you an opportunity to pull away. But it's definitely there for the taking. I think this team definitely can finish second in the conference. Minnesota State probably not going to be dropping too many points. They do, we talk about all the time, these teams in this conference have like travel pairs. Minnesota State and St. Cloud State are that pair. So Minnesota State plays the same tough teams in Augustana and Wayne State this weekend. So we'll see. I mean, there's still an outside chance that they somehow drop both of those games. And then you're sitting on next Tuesday, only 1 point behind them for the NSIC championship, but not going to hold my breath necessarily for that, just given the track record that Minnesota State has shown this year. But yeah, all in all, I mean, very exciting stuff for the women's soccer team. It's been, a number of games unbeaten now. You look at the 4-game winning streak, and then before that, they had a 4-game unbeaten streak. So, I mean, they're 8 games in a row unbeaten. That's really good. That's exactly the momentum you want to have, and we'll hope that they can keep compounding on that this weekend on the road.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we've talked about Barthels, who's a friend of the podcast, and just as a huge, obviously, to have a team like this, to be a good team, obviously everybody has to be good, and that's not taking away from any of the success of the other players on the team this year. But to have that number one, to have that person who, when you need a goal, when you give up that penalty, with 10 minutes to go, who's somebody who you can go to okay, get us that back. In basketball, it's that you're tied up. Your team has given up an 8-0 run. Who's the person you give the ball back to at least just get back on the board? And that's been Katrina for Bemidji State this year. But Ian, who else has really kind of impressed you? Who else have you seen kind of in this year that's really led to the success? Maybe it's not a specific player, but just kind of what areas of this team have just really impressed you so far to get to this position that they're in? Because we always talk about their defense, but why their defense, or just kind of break it down for us. What's really led to this success?
Well, I'm going to pull up the actual statistics right now to see how many she has, but something that I've kind of taken a noticing to is that every time we have goals, one thing that they've done is really spread out the goals really well. It seems like, yes, every weekend we're talking about Katrina Barthelt adding to our goal tally, but then it's this player scored their first goal of the season, or this, second goal of the season. I don't know that they have a ton of goal scorers behind Barthelt that have more than 2, maybe 3 goals. But somebody that's really been up at the top when you talk about the assist totals has been Ella Wade. She has 4 assists on the season, which is tied with Katrina Barthelt. And of course, Barthelt's going to have a lot of assists because she's always in and around the attacking play. But Ella Wade has been somebody that's really impressed me too. I wanted to go and make sure I had that right because it seems like every time there's goal scorers, it seems like whose name is popping up, it's Ella's. She's also put away a couple penalty kicks, I believe, on the season and has a couple goals of her own. So she's been somebody that's really impressed me, helping to kind of build out from the back and get the attack moving.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of attacks moving, Bemidji State football. We're going to get to them in just 1 second. But first, we do need to shout out our great sponsors of the podcast, Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. And once a Beaver, always a Beaver. The Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation is here to keep that green and white pride going strong for its 50,000 graduates around the world. From scholarships that open doors for students to events that bring BSU alumni and friends together, you can get connected, give back, and leave a legacy at Bemidji State. Whether you're a proud BSU grad, a local supporter, or just love cheering on the Beavers, and boy, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. Come be a part of the action at bsualumni.org. That's bsualumni.org. BSUALUMNI.org. Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation, proud sponsors of the Beaver Banter podcast. They do a lot of great stuff. Go check them out, the Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation at bsualumni.org. All right, Ian, Bemidji State football, just up and down the field, started things off early. There were a couple injuries that obviously going into this game, Bemidji State coming off of the bye, you're worried about, kind of maybe the bye week blues and things like that. There's a couple notes that I think you just have to look at when it comes to the overall stat sheet in this game. And the first of which is Jake Hill coming back healthy. Didn't quite know what his injury situation was going to look like coming out of that game against Wayne. And he comes into this one, gets a 17-yard touchdown pass, gets a 15-yard touchdown pass, gets a 22-yard touchdown pass. And Bemidji State has been looking for that number one wide receiver. I know, a couple of years ago was Brendan Bolio. I know Bryce Peters was in that mix as well. Obviously, if you go way back, you have Del Duncan Busby and who is going to be that next guy to step up? And Jake Hill really is making himself a case. He's been this team's number one pass catcher this year. And right now, based on the stat sheets, it's not even close.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had a hell of a game. That's the one thing I was going to compare him to was, this weekend it looked a little bit, Mechanic to Jake Hill looked a lot like, Alta Bolio in some of those games where he had 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think Bolio had 4 touchdowns in that playoff game against Winona a couple of years ago. Like you said, CJ, 4 catches for 57 yards and 3 touchdowns. Drayton Lehman had 10 catches for 112 yards and a touchdown as well. Bart Mechanic, 21 of 24, 230 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That'll play.
That is a far cry from a few weeks ago when he played against Minot in what I believe was his first start was against Minot. He had gotten game action before that, but his first start where he threw the 2 pick sixes or, 1 pick six and then one that got called back for a holding, but was returned for a touchdown. This is a far cry from that. And it's, really impressive to see the growth that he's made in just a few short weeks. And I know it's Jamestown, but, at the end of the day, you still have to go out there and perform. And that's exactly what the Beavers did. There's really no point in this game where I felt like the Beavers really were struggling to deal with Jamestown. There was a little bit at the end of the first half where, they fumbled a kick return after Jamestown went down and got a field goal. And I think Jamestown answered with a touchdown to end the half, or maybe it was vice versa, touchdown first, field goal second. I'm not sure. But and then Bemidji State comes right out in the second half and scores a touchdown and puts an end to that nonsense, and it's just good to see all around. I mean, Antonio Brown, 15 carries, 108 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Tisdale, 7 carries, 54 yards and a touchdown. Mitch Olson, 9 carries, 45 yards. It just all around this team, was very well balanced. And, I liked what I saw from the defense too. It was a little bit of a higher point total. And there was the controversy at the end of the game where, Jamestown is taking, timeouts at the end of a blowout game, and Bolte kind of took exception to that. And so, Zach Romack gets into the game and he says, yeah, don't go down, go into the end zone and score a touchdown and, take those 7 points back from them. But
right,
it is what it is.
Hey, this is NSIC football. This ain't no NAIA stuff. You don't get to, look, Jamestown's a good program. They'll get themselves back up. They'll be competitive in the coming years. But look, man, this isn't playing Valley City State twice a year, who, by the way, you couldn't even beat. Who do you think you are coming into the chat? Come on. On. Yeah. So anyway, good job. Good job, Bolte. Make him earn that. But yeah, I think the other thing that we need to note too in this game, Ian, the second thing I wanted to bring up is no Connor Carver in the game this week. Now, it could just be they're resting him. They knew that they could beat Jamestown without him, but knowing how much they relied on him offensively and how in the second half against Wayne, when he wasn't in there, the offense just stalled out. So it was I felt like this is probably because of injury related more than, or like he couldn't actually play more than like, yeah, he could, but we're going to rest him, all that stuff. Like, I mean, and that's not to say he's going to miss this next weekend's game. Who knows? But they didn't play him at all. And it'll just remain to be seen how long he's going to be out for. You took advantage against Jamestown. And look, it's a really positive sign, not just for Makinich at quarterback, but for the offense overall, that they could generate movement without their best offensive player on the field and still put up 47 and do all that stuff. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the guys in the field. They did a great job. They stepped up. They did exactly what they needed to do. But long term, I mean, Connor Carver is your best offensive weapon. You're going to need to, I mean, there's going to be times where you're going to wish he's on the field. And obviously they want him to be on the field, but it's just going to be that injury still, even after the bye week, still missed a game. So will he miss another this upcoming week will remain to be seen. I don't think there's really too much more to break down on this Jamestown game. Bemidji State took care of business. They got up big. They did what they needed to do. So now all eyes kind of point towards this next move for the Beavers. And as they do that, they get ready for a familiar foe, and they got to go try and get the axe on the road.
Yeah. One thing about Carver, I mean, we're not in the program. We don't have ears on the ground necessarily.
Before, they don't have to release any injury info.
I'm wondering if it is a little bit of a human element where it's like, all right, well, we're playing Jamestown. Like, maybe he could play, but
I mean, I agree. There probably is a little bit of like,
there we don't know.
They just couldn't move the ball without him against Wayne.
That's what I'm hoping.
Right.
I'm hoping that he's good to go against Moorhead. And they're just like, you know what? You're 90% good. Let's get you 100% good. Like, we'll see.
Right.
Because like you said, Moorhead is a hell of an offense.
It's a huge confidence booster, by the way. Sorry to cut you off. It's a huge confidence booster, by the way, for Makinich and for that offense that they could do that without him in there, which is just good going through, even if he 100%. Is able to come back good. But if he's not, you at least know your offense can move without him.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's really key. To see them do that without him was awesome. And like you said, Moorhead, one of the best offenses in the NSIC. I mean, we know what they're about. They're going to throw the ball all over the yard, man. I mean, they averaged 37.1 points per game this year. They just played a hell of a game against Northern State. CJ, did you see any of that? I was about to swear. Did you see any of that stuff? Northern State somehow got bussing with the boys to like promote their all black uniforms. Yeah, like Will Compton and Taylor Lewan are like repping Northern State uniforms. Like, get out to the bank. Like, and it was a hell of a game. I think Northern State.
What do we got to do to get bussing with the boys to promote some Bemidji State stuff? What do we got to do? Do we got to send a thing of gear to John Gruden for Barstool? Like, what do we got to do to get some love for this program that has been much better than Northern
State. Man. Hey, no disrespect. They're having a decent year. You know, I mean, we've beaten them, but they're having a decent year this year.
Yeah, they're having a decent year, and we still beat them. So
yeah, well, and they beat Moorhead, who we play this week. So it's a little bit cyclical. You know,
the transitive property.
They won 49-48, I believe it was. It was a hell of an offensive performance. I think Moorhead scored a touchdown and tried to get a 2-point conversion to win it, and Northern ended up stopping that, so they won by 1 point. But yeah, Moorhead, I mean, they air the ball out, and they average 348 passing yards a game. And let's see how many rushing yards they average a game, CJ. 90.3. The only team that's below them is Southwest Minnesota State.
Not exactly company you want to be in.
Exactly. But that's mostly just from
alumni of. I have one alumni of the program who I have contact with, who was like a lineman. This is like decades ago, but he was once in the program, and I talked with him like, yeah, you're gonna go up and watch a game. He's like, yeah, and it's gonna take 5 freaking hours to watch this game because they just pass all the time. Can you tell he was an offensive lineman? He wants to run the football. He hates that they pass 50 times a game. And so, anyways, get ready for a long one. On
we
Saturday
talked
afternoon.
about how it could be short, when we play Minot State and Wayne State, two teams that love to run the ball. By the way, Wayne State upset Mankato this weekend. They ran for like 385 yards in that game. Like, the NSIC was wilding this weekend, man. They were wilding across the board. Bemidji State was just like, you know what? We'll just have our nice little game against Jamestown. We're not going to worry about any chaos this week. We're just going to – and again, it's like, well, okay. Beavers take care of business. Right. Transitive property is not really that reliable, right? But like at the same time, it's like, well, we beat Wayne State just a couple weeks ago, and they just beat Mankato. Like, but at the same time, like, there's
Was Wayne's backup quarterback in there against Mankato?
I don't know actually, but yeah, either way, like, I don't know. But
we'll take
getting back to Moorhead, like it's a little bit of a strength on strength. Bemidji State's second in the NSIC, CJ, in pass yards allowed per game, which is 180. And I do think some of that is skewed by the early season woes the Beavers had, where a lot of teams just kind of pounded the rock. And they
got up early, so there was no reason to pass.
So two teams that don't love to pass a ton in Wayne State and Minot, they've played both of them. So like all of these things kind of lead into that. But at the end of the day, they've done a good job against the pass, and we'll see where Bemidji State ranks after this game against Moorhead. But, last year was something we talked about as well. How can they slow down Jack Strand and this Moorhead Dragons, passing attack? And they did a pretty good job of it. I think, was it last year that we had the Hail Mary at the end of the half to Bryce Peters? I think it was where we kind of got ourselves back in that game, and then the second half looked a lot better defensively from us. So we'll see. I mean, this is going to be a real test for this team. Not that they haven't kind of played, like they played Northern State. Northern State's 5-2, 6-2 overall, 3-1 in the division. I mean, we're that one loss in the division to Northern State right now. They are having a good year, and we've beaten them. Wayne State as well. Like they're 4-4 overall, but they're still a good team. Like they just beat Mankato. Clearly they're pretty good. So it's not like we really have to like prove ourselves. This is clearly a very different team over the last month that we've seen than it was for the first 5 weeks of the season. But it'll be very interesting to see now how they fare against, MSU Moorhead, and Minnesota Duluth is on the back end of this game, but we don't want to look too far ahead.
These are two big rivalry games that are coming up, one from the West, one from the East, and then you have Mary to cap off your season. But yeah, I mean, these are two games to really just kind of figure out what this team is made of. And it's a fascinating thing. And maybe this conversation is premature because maybe they play against Moorhead and they come out and they just lose, and then you play Duluth and then you have a tough loss or something like that. And then we kind of readjust priorities again. But as we were talking before we hit record on this episode, Ian, it's just like, man, I wish you could go back in time and you could have this current iteration of the team and then go backwards to the beginning of the year, where like it felt like it took Bemidji State the first half of the season just to find their identity, to find who their signal caller was, to get identity in their play caller and offensive coordinator Jordan Hine, who is in his first year doing that. It just took this team a little bit of time to get things going. And by the time they figured it out, the season was just kind of too late to really make something of it. But if you go back and look, you're like, oh, this team almost beat Winona. This team, had a chance in the first half. They had a first half lead against Michigan Tech and things like that. And if just a couple of these games go the other way, I mean, they're 3-5 right now. They hold on to beat Winona. They're 4-4. If they don't find a way to throw that pick six against Minot State, they're 5-3. And it's just some of that's, and then your only two losses were against like,
and then we could be recklessly talking about playoffs right now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So like, we want to have our cake and eat it too, right? Like this is a team where they obviously needed that time to figure things out. So like, you can't just be like, oh, why couldn't they have played like this at the beginning of the year? Because Makinich was not starting. Like he needed time, like they needed time to go through their options and figure things out. And, it was Carver right away and things like that. And then you eventually cycle around and, Romack was in the mix as well. And then you kind of find the groove that works and you get the play calling, you get your team going, and you needed that time. But also, gosh dang it, if they would have found a way to figure a couple things out just a little bit earlier, this season could be different. But it does just point in the direction. And we said this on the podcast, Ian, when they went 0-5, there was a lot of bad vibes just from people outside the program. I'm not saying there are bad vibes in the program, but outside, people were like, what's going on? Is this team done? Is there like, are we just back to being blah again? Are we going to the pre-2015 era of Bemidji State football? And we both on this program were very like, no, like this is a coaching staff that's led them to like a half decade of not only playoffs, but playoff success. Like just give them a little bit of time to turn things around. And at this moment, it looks like they've kind of turned things around and figured things out, which again, this season might be lost. But it really just can, and this is, remember, for Vikings fans, how you finish can kind of point the direction into the next season because this season's toast. And of course, I'm talking about the Vikings on that one. But the point is like Bemidji State has the quarterback right now. They have the play caller getting some, kind of found the groove, and the rest of the team finding the groove, by the way. And you can kind of use that to go into next year of like last season was weird, but we figured things out, and now it's full steam ahead into 2026. And how they play in these two games will depend on how much we put the brick on the accelerator for that hype.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they still technically have a chance to finish the season over 500. They still technically have a chance to win the North. I mean, it's right there for the taking. I mean, honestly, it would be the weirdest thing you've ever seen, but like Northern State kind of did this last year. CJ, when we played them last year and got upset by them, they were not a good team at that point in the season, and they ended up kind of finishing right around that 5-6 or 6-5 mark or something like that, if I'm remembering that correctly, and kind of made a respectable season out of it. And that's exactly what I think Bemidji State has the opportunity to do here. You look at the defense, especially. I don't want to just shout out the offense. The defense has looked a lot better in these 3 games. They start off the season allowing 37, 21, 56, 42, and 28 points. And over this 3-game win streak, they have allowed just 21, 21, and 25 points. Not world-beating stuff, not what we saw last year or even the year before necessarily from this team, but that's good enough to win you games, especially when the offense is starting to figure it out and kind of help. I talked about it earlier in the season. It's got to be a little symbiotic. I thought a big reason that they lost that Winona State game is because the defense eventually fell off because the offense fell off. The offense couldn't move the ball in the second half, and it just gave Winona State opportunity after opportunity to get them back in that game. And eventually the defense just got so tired they couldn't keep up with the Warriors at the end of the game. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this defense can handle this, unique Minnesota State attack. Like, it's so interesting in this conference. You have to go from, playing against the wing T at Minot State to, playing against the spread offense. Like, we're going to run and gun, with Winona or with Minnesota State.
It's not quite the most, Moorhead does this more than Bemidji State used to. But remember, Bemidji State did that for a while. They were spread. They were doing some of that stuff, and they still have some elements of that to this day. But they were full go with that, especially in the early alt era. And it was like, their games were fun. They won. They were long. They did take a little bit to go because the clock, and that was in the, part of that's the old college football rule of the clock stops after the first down and things like that, which just kind of also helped into that. So I'm not saying it's entirely that, but yeah, no, Bemidji State is a huge opportunity in front of them in football, and be really awesome. They could take care of business on that one. So, Ian, let's talk a little Bemidji State volleyball as we go through here. Again, the team went 0-2 on the weekend, but before we were able to talk about that, the right way to word this, I guess, after we recorded last week's episode, they then played University of Minnesota Duluth, a team that, and I watched that match in Duluth, had their way with the Beavers, and Bemidji State this time came back in their building, found a way to get a huge upset win in what'll be the best win of the season so far and the best win under the Butte era at Bemidji State volleyball. Yeah, dude. I mean, absolutely electric stuff. A couple years ago, they beat St. Cloud State when St. Cloud State was ranked, I don't remember what it was, 9th or 13th or something like that. They were a top 15 team in the country, and it was really cool to see. But at the end of the day, this is one of the biggest wins I can remember for BSU volleyball, and I'm trying to pull up the exact stats. Micah tweeted it, our friend Micah, who does the wonderful work with the Alumni Foundation, tweeted it out after the game, exactly how long it's been. This win snapped Minnesota Duluth's 39-match winning streak in the series and a 27-year winless drought against the Bulldogs. I mean, it's not something we were fond of bringing up. It's like the football game a few years ago, remember? Yeah, dude. I mean, they had it was, and football, they're different too, because they for sure only play once a year. Sometimes we play them twice a year in volleyball. But yeah, football, it was 18 years since we had done it. And in Duluth, it was since World War II or something like that, since we had won a game in Duluth in football. And so it's awesome to see them not only do it, but also do it against Duluth, who, was ranked top, 16th at the time.
incredible, especially after, like you said, CJ, what they did to you earlier this season and completely dismantled you, in that game, 3 sets straight, straight sets over the Beavers earlier. Like you said, we recorded our last week's episode on Monday and we don't really release it until Wednesday. And so everybody's probably listening to that episode going, why aren't you talking about the big game last night? Like we won against Duluth. And I think we did preface before like that. You probably wouldn't hear it, but yeah, awesome. I mean, just awesome to see that and to see the pictures. Brent Sizek, photographer, got some great photos of just the pure emotion on the players' faces after the final kill. It's weird to call it a kill because it's like you feel like when it's a kill, you're going up and slamming it down, and it was more of like a the little fake set it over the net on the second hit rather than setting
it's called
it
a
to
dump.
A dump, yeah. So
yes,
my volleyball terminology is definitely not.
My volleyball
my brother
terminology is not
and
great.
sister would both be very upset at me. My brother played club volleyball for Moorhead, and my sister played volleyball for like her entire life. So I would be
my
getting
volleyball
yelled at
terminology is not great either. But I have a coworker who's really knows like all the volleyball terminology. So I just kind of like hear him say it, and then it's like the meme where it's just like write that down. But yeah, that's a dump off
right
pass.
Hey, it's a win.
It's a kill.
Win is what it is.
Yeah,
it's
it
awesome.
is.
So it's just awesome to see. And it's one of those where you just never know when you need to be in the building. So you should go to every game because something like that could happen at any time.
Right, exactly. And, also just a huge win for the program, a big opportunity for Bemidji State. And they hosted the top team in the conference, which was Wayne State. They were ranked 6th. And that one, Wayne State had their way a little bit. They won in straight sets throughout the match. And that's one where, again, they won 25-15, 25-21, and then 25-17. So they're a team that's top 6 in the country. Like, what are you going to do? You're coming off a really big win the time before. And you just kind of keep building off that. Lily Reese had 11 kills. Ava Eighthman had 7. Grace Hofford had 4. So did Ella Cratcheville. And that was kind of how things shook out for the Beavers in that game. Their hitting percentage just at 12%. Wayne State's was at 34.6 in that one. Looking at the game on Saturday afternoon against Augustana for Parents' Night and what is the, again, second to last kind of home weekend. They have one more, but it's a month away in the middle of November. They took on Wayne State. They also lost that one in straight sets by scores of 25-23, 25-19, and then kind of ran out of gas at the end, 25-14 in that third set. Lily Reese had 12 kills. Nevaeh Carlson had 9. Ava Eighthman, 4 kills. And Carly Dunham had 2 throughout the match as well. So that's how things work for Bemidji State. Their hitting percentage, I mean, just, not the one that obviously Coach Butte would want. They had a hitting percentage of 9.6% on their attacks. They actually had more attempts than Augie in that match. They had 104 attempts compared to Augie's 95. And Bemidji State had 8 more errors, but the kills were about the same. But again, Bemidji State just had to work so much harder to get their offense going. And it does speak, obviously, to the defense and the blocking ability of Augustana to be able to do that. But Bemidji State's offense just didn't quite have the great weekend coming off that huge upset win. And now they have their sights set going on the road to a team in Sioux Falls and then to Southwest Minnesota State. And if you take a look, Southwest Minnesota State kind of in the middle of the pack, Sioux Falls right next to them. They're both 8-6 in conference play. Bemidji State right now at 4-10 in a tie with Augustana and Jamestown. And that Augustana win is really where you felt like just a missed opportunity. Obviously, you're playing Wayne. That's going to happen. Top 6 team in the country. You really felt like maybe against Augustana that you just kind of didn't quite have the game that you wanted. Things didn't go your way. Just weren't able to execute. And, you can look at it that way. You could also look at it in a way of, hey, we already, like we were expecting in that 3-game stretch to go 1-2, and that just, you replace that for the UMD win and kind of flip flop it. But that's how things look for volleyball to wrap up the weekend, Ian.
Yeah, a couple more opportunities before the season ends to, pick up a couple of victories. Hopefully there's, 3 or 4 games on the schedule, probably about 3, where you're like, all right, there's a pretty realistic chance. But honestly, when you think about it, there's really 6, because if they can go out there and beat Duluth, they could do it at any point. And I'm just hoping that they can pick up 1 or 2 wins towards the end of the season to kind of keep that momentum rolling and keep the program heading in that direction. Not that it would necessarily be like a disaster if this team in the first year of its new head coach lost all 6 of these games. But, look for some competitive sets and, look to, push it to 5 or something like that, Take what you can. I said this last weekend too, and then they went out and beat Duluth. So hopefully my ramblings again can motivate them into taking some more upsets.
And looking into cross country, Bemidji State ended up finishing 10th at the NSIC cross country championships. That was in Wayne. Maggie McCarthy had a top 20 finish. She finished 20th with a time of 22:52.7, which was just less than 2 seconds away from her PR in the 6K. Following this, Bemidji State now is going to get ready for the NCAA Regional. That is going to take place on November 8th in Joplin, Missouri at the Tom Rutledge cross country course there. And then the championships are set in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So Bemidji State, potentially their last race of the season coming up a week from Saturday, and we'll see what happens there with the Beavers. Ian, we got 20 more minutes left here in the show to wrap things up. Let's just start with women's hockey. They were off the last 2 weeks. They will play this weekend. They got to match up with the Mavs.
Yeah, and I think a very winnable, matchup with the Mavs. This has kind of been that series over the last couple of years that the Beavers have tried to get up for and take their opportunity where it comes. This is a very difficult conference. We got to try to get our points, and this is really where you kind of see how big those steps have been that this team has made under Coach Frickland in her first 2 years, now her second year. A couple opportunities here back to back at Minnesota State this weekend. Then you come back home to play St. Thomas. I think Minnesota State is probably going to finish 7th or 8th this year in the conference. St. Thomas probably will finish 6th or 7th in the conference this year. And a lot of where they finish is going to depend on how we do as a program. If we can take care of business against them, it's going to be, big time for this program. So I don't know, Minnesota State, I've definitely seen that they've had some pretty good success. Just following other accounts on Twitter that we follow, for the men's team that have kind of forwarded some stuff from their women's team. They did just get shut out in their last game against Wisconsin, 8-0. But, can you really hold that against them? It's not very easy to play against the Badgers this year, as we know from firsthand. But yeah, right now, Minnesota State, they've played 6 games in the conference. They have 4 points. They're currently sitting in 6th place. The Beavers have played 4 games in the conference, of course, being against the top 2 teams in the conference in Wisconsin and Ohio State, who are 6-0 and 5-1, respectively, in the conference. So Bemidji State with an opportunity here, definitely to pick up some points. And we'll see. We'll see what can happen. I'm excited. This is going to be the first real big barometer, I think, for season 2 under Coach Frickland. You have the games against Wisconsin and Ohio State, but how much can that really teach you about your team? I'm really inspired about the 1-2 loss that we took against Ohio State, where you come out and you really played a competitive game with them in the second game. And then, how good is Robert Morris? Really, you did sweep them, but it was at home. So going on the road to take on a Minnesota State team who you've done pretty well. I can't remember exactly how many points we took off of them last year, CJ, but I do believe we took a majority of the points, whether it was like 7 or 8 from last year's matchups with the Mavericks. I do believe they for sure won one of those series, and then they might have split the other one 3-3. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this team can do. Hopefully Haley Armstrong can keep her goal scoring tally going. And it's weird too, because we haven't seen this team play hockey in like a half a month. So we really don't know what to expect. But, if you're in the Mankato area and you feel like getting some spooky hockey on Friday on Halloween, that game starts at 6:02 and then 2:02 on Saturday in Mankato.
I think you're thinking of St. Thomas.
Was it St. Thomas last year?
Yeah, because Bemidji State got swept in Mankato last year.
Okay.
And then when they played them in Bemidji, they got a win in overtime, so they took a point, but they only got 1 point off the Mavs last year, or 2 points, off the Mavs because with the overtime win. So that was well,
maybe what I'm thinking of is this year, CJ.
You're thinking of the team in purple that you really don't like. That's all you were thinking of.
The Vikings? I'm just kidding.
Okay. You got your win. What are you talking about?
I'm just kidding around.
There had to be a Chargers reference in here somewhere.
The school in purple that I really don't like. Yeah, that narrows it down between St. Thomas and Mankato. Like, okay.
Yeah. The one who gets a little high and mighty on their own supply very often.
Still thinking here.
Still not narrowing it down at all.
Down much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So no, it'll be a fun weekend. And again, interesting to tell because when they played the teams, they've given up a lot of goals. They really played good defensively against Robert Morris. So it'll be very, like you said, it's a barometer in a lot of ways. We know this team is capable of scoring. It's going to be that defense. It's going to be the goaltending. It's going to be some of that stuff that'll be very fascinating to watch as an opponent that's a little closer to the competition level of the Beavers. Ian, we're going to wrap up the show talking about men's hockey and their big series here coming up, going down to Bowling Green after getting some big wins at home against Augustana. But first, why don't you give a little shout out to Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation?
Do you want to be a part of the team behind the teams at Bemidji State? Join hundreds of dedicated fans when you donate to Beaver Athletics and help BSU pursue its next championship. Your gift can power your favorite program, establish a scholarship for a student athlete you get to meet, and so much more. Every dollar brings the Beavers closer to raising another trophy. You can add to the proud tradition of success at Bemidji State. So don't wait. Give today at bsualumni.org/Beavers. That's BSUALUMNI.org/BEAVERS.
Alrighty, in Bemidji State, men's hockey had, it's kind of a tale of two series here, or a tale of kind of every weekend for the BSU men's hockey team, because coming out of the non-conference, and I know we always preface it, it's non-conference, but really kind of had their tail between their legs the last two games against the Bulldogs. Didn't have a great series against St. Cloud State either. So back-to-back, not great weekends. And then you come out and you play a really excellent weekend against Augustana and take 5 of 6 points because Bemidji State men's hockey.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. I mean, I was really impressed with what I saw this weekend, and that's something we talked about last week is trying to put it behind us and accept that, all right, the CCHA historically has not been a multi-bid conference. So what's really going to matter is what's in front of us in the conference. And they took care of business against Augustana. I mean, the things that we were worried about, they did really well on. They allowed 2 goals on the weekend total, which is 1 per game, which if you do that, you're going to win a lot of hockey games if you average 1 goal given up per game. It was maybe the most entertaining 0-0 game heading into overtime that I've ever seen. Like, I know that's kind of cliche, and they even said that on the broadcast. Like, you say that every time it's 0-0, but like this one actually was like, I think we played a game against Michigan Tech a couple of years ago where it was similar to that, where it was just 2 goalies battling it out and it was kind of boring. But this one was pretty entertaining. I thought that there could have been multiple goals in that game. Noah Quinn, especially. I thought he had a great weekend overall, but he had a between the legs like stick drag that Kotai absolutely just robbed off of him, which I thought should have been a highlight reel goal for Noah. But unfortunately it wasn't, and it took all the way until the overtime period. But guess who? Oliver Peer buried it for the Beavers off of a good play by Adam Flamang to have some patience and kind of walk to the other side of the net. And then he found Peer. And, whether it was a missed attempt at a slap shot that he or not a slap shot from 5 feet away from the net, but whether it was a fan shot or just a shot fake to try to get Kotai out of position, Peer was very patient with it and ended up burying it and winning the game for the Beavers and getting.
It's one where you could see a lot of people overthink it and kind of just bobble it. You know what I mean? And he just, had the patience to stick through it and get the win, because that was a huge spot. You'd see a lot of people tense up and just kind of freak out and, whatever, just hit it towards the net. And had the patience to get the goal in, and Bemidji State able to take a point off Augustana.
Yeah. I mean, 2 points, take the extra point
took the extra
in that
point,
game.
Yes.
So 2 points going into that one. And then you go into Saturday and you really played well again. I think Augustana outshot them in this game, but it was 3-2 final score. Vince Corcoran scored a goal in the first period. And then the Beavers unfortunately gave it up. At the end of the first period, it was, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. It was another goal that just kind of pissed me off, man, because it was one of those, it's This isn't even. Oh, it was a good save by Hildebrand. Like I think the whole first period, the Beavers were kind of giving up some odd man rushes, and they were doing pretty well, and they were having some sloppy passing, and it finally kind of beat them. I think it was Corcoran. They kind of got, whether he slipped or just kind of got mauled at the blue line. It gave up a really good opportunity for a 1-on-0 with Hildebrand in net. Hildebrand made a good save, and then I don't know if he didn't hug the post tightly enough or what, but they kind of just threw it back off of his back and into the goal. So that was frustrating when you're like, oh, nice, dude, he saved the breakaway, and then you look and the puck's still at the back of the net. I'm like, what? How does that happen? But yeah, so it was 1-1 heading into the second. Max Nemetsnikov got his first goal as a Beaver, which was a sight for sore eyes. He did get an assist on the Corcoran goal in the first period. Jake McLean and Noah Quinn getting an assist on that one. And then under a minute later, Casper Magnuson adds one courtesy of Adam Flamang. So the Beavers had a 3-1 lead. Owen Baumgartner, I assume no relation. No relation. Scored for Augustana in the third period.
If he was, he'd be dead to me.
Yeah, exactly. But the Beavers were able to hold on. And it, like, the story of the weekend, CJ, is the penalty kill and the power play. Unfortunately, like that's the one the one negative I can really take away from this weekend is the power play. I think the Beavers had 9 opportunities between Friday and Saturday night to score a power play goal, and they scored none. Augustana does have a really good penalty kill. I think they might have come into, it was either into the weekend or into Saturday night at like 90%, which is really good. But if you're given 9 opportunities at home, you should probably score at least one of them. You know what I mean? Like whether they're a good penalty kill or not. So
you think just by the law of averages, you'd be able to get one through.
Yeah. I mean, but it didn't hurt them, and that's a good thing.
I think you made a point on the Beaver Banter account when they got the man advantage, and you're like, just put him back on the ice. Like,
yeah, I did. I was like,
and that was correct.
Let's just decline it.
Can we decline penalties in hockey?
Right, and it was weird too, because like going into this weekend, the one thing you thought you didn't have to worry about was the penalty, like the power play, because that's the only way that they could score against Duluth the weekend prior, and like that's exactly what Jared Roboto, when I commented back at him, I'm like, are we allowed to decline these penalties? But yeah, but the penalty kill was awesome, and the penalty kill, 5 for 5, I believe, on the weekend. And that was something really good to see, because I came into the weekend 67% on the penalty kill, which is horrible. It's awful. It's not good. And to see them go 5 for 5, and it was, I think Jared, again, put this in an article, or at least in the headline of his tweet, that said it was almost poetic that it ended up being a 6-on-4 with an empty net to end the game for the Beavers. And they had to kill off another penalty to take all 3 points on that Saturday night game. But they did it. They won. It was really impressive against an Augustana team who I don't really know what to make of them. I mean, they've had a really good success outside of conference. Like they swept Arizona State, which is a good team. And they split with a Minnesota Duluth team who is, spoiler alert, very good. 7-1 on the season. They just swept the Gophers, which
not looking good in Dinkytown this. Not an early good sense in Dinkytown this year.
No, not at all. But the Gophers aren't what they were, the last couple of years or half decade even. But that's still a good team in Duluth, and maybe I was overreacting.
Makes the losses look a little. It makes them look less bad.
Yeah. So, hey, 5 points to start the season. It's obviously way too early to start looking at the standings, because only, 6 teams have even played conference series yet. But Beavers are in third right now, and they have a big series coming up against the second place team in Bowling Green, who just got a sweep over Lake Superior State this last weekend on the road in Sault Ste. Marie, which is, unexpected. They are currently 2-2 on the season. They got swept by Niagara to start the year, which I think was a big shock to a lot of people. And they also played pretty poorly in their exhibition against Robert Morris at Slater. So we'll see. This is going to be a very interesting series with Bowling Green.
It's never an easy road trip to go down.
No,
and you got to do it on Halloween. So
yeah, it's going to be spooky. I'll tell you that much. Maybe we can channel some Halloween magic. I know last year we did pretty well against them. I think we won a game in a shootout.
It was like late in the season when Bemidji State was kind of starting to piece it all together.
Crazy ass overtime period. That's right. I think we won that game in a shootout or maybe in overtime.
And it was kind of one of those where you're like, okay, like they're starting to figure. It wasn't like right in the middle of their stretch at the end of the year, but it was kind of like at the beginning of where you're like, okay, like this is a team that can kind of put it together at the right time. And they ended up doing that. So maybe they could just do it earlier in the year and then win more conference games throughout the year. And then we don't have to sweat it come February.
Right. Exactly. But hey, these are two teams that are in very similar spots. You know, both of them started off the year a little precariously. Bemidji State obviously picking up a couple of wins against Anchorage, but and now they won their first conference series of the year. Both of them did. Both teams have a lot of players from major juniors that are coming in, you know, from the CHL. It's a big transition period for both of these teams. So we'll see which one of them is more up to the task. If I had to make a prediction for this weekend, I think the Beavers probably take somewhere between 2 and 4 points. I think one of them is going to go to overtime. We'll see. That's just kind of how it always works when we play Bowling Green lately. Like, you know, even back to that series before Christmas break a couple of years ago when the run started to start for the Beavers.
Whenever Bemidji State plays Bowling Green, they always after end up playing really good hockey. So,
hey, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll see. Between 2 to 4 points, I think I'd be very happy with even 2 points from this weekend. Like going on the road to play a Bowling Green team who was disappointing to start the season, but I still think a lot of people they picked them pretty highly in the conference. You know, when you listen to a lot of those reporters' corners that came out before the season started, a lot of people had Bowling Green in their top 4, and some of them even had them winning the conference preseason. And obviously that's preseason polls. A lot of us had Bemidji State winning the conference last year, but that didn't go so well for us. So we'll see. Points are points, and whether it's October or February, the points all count the same. And I guess technically it'll be both October and November for this series. But yeah, let's go in and steal some points on the road. Like you said, CJ, this is one of the weirdest places to play. It's one of the longest road trips the Beavers have to do. Obviously this year withstanding with the Anchorage trip in there.
They won those 2 games, so it doesn't matter for that.
Yeah,
but
exactly. We're not
to
counting
start your year, so you weren't kind of in the full grind of the season yet.
Exactly.
You kind of had the tank was on F.
Yeah,
and now
it's a weird road trip to say the least.
Right.
But we'll see what the Beavers can do with it.
Here we go. All right, wrapping up the show. Ian, anything else in the world of Bemidji State that we feel like is mentioning as we try and close up the pod for the week?
No, I'm looking for I'm super excited for women's soccer. Playoffs are right around the corner. There's only 3 games left. So hopefully they can pick up some more points this weekend. Hopefully at least 4, but honestly, I'm hoping for 6. That would be awesome. So yeah, good luck to all the teams.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Beaver Banter podcast. Go join the Beaver Banter Discord, which is always popping this time of year, especially with hockey in full swing. Go join that. Go find our socials on Facebook or X, and we have it pinned up at the top where you can find that as well. Follow the Beaver Banter podcast on YouTube as well, presented by Bemidji State Alumni and Foundation. We'll see you guys next time.